In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, I am going to share my thoughts on 5 prospects that I've been paying close attention to at the NBL Blitz in Australia. Stay tuned as I share my thoughts on Bobi Klintman, Taran Armstrong, Alex Sarr, AJ Johnson, and Trentyn Flowers. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I want to thank you, whether it's your first listen, second, third, fourth, whether you're listening in the car on your way to work, or you're listening at work, at the gym. I just want to thank you for listening and supporting the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, share, like, and again, thank you for supporting NBA Big Board. And also, basketball season is around the corner. Actually, it's already started in Europe and even in Australia, and that's what this episode is about. But this episode is brought to you by none other than Bird Dogs. If you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, and if you enter the promo code Locked On, you can get a free water bottle with any purchase. You don't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right, once again, this is Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And like I mentioned in the opening, this episode is about the NBL Blitz, which is taking place in Australia. I had an invitation to go. I couldn't swing it. Honestly, I couldn't swing it. I was in the middle of a move. Going to Australia is not cheap. I made a mistake few years back going to Australia, and I pride myself on geography. I love geography. I love to travel, but I made this huge mistake of thinking that since I was in China, I was in Beijing, that I'm on the same side of the globe as Australia. I'm going to go down there, I'm going to watch a game, and then I just turn around and come back. Huge mistake. It took me like 19 hours or something like that of travel time to get from Beijing to, I forgot where I landed at, I think Sydney, and then to go to Auckland, New Zealand. And I went watch RJ Hampton versus LaMelo Ball, and then I turned around. I mean, it was a huge mistake, traveling mistake. It was almost the equivalent of me going from Beijing to Dallas, grabbing my hat and the shirt and turning around and coming right back. I was absolutely exhausted after that trip. So I told myself, if I ever go to Australia, I'm going to be there at least a week and some change. And that's a pretty expensive trip. But anyway, you didn't tune in to hear my travel adventures, but you did tune in because you want to hear about some NBA draft prospects. And the Australia NBL Next Stars program loaded up on talent this year. And again, like I mentioned, this episode I'm going to talk about 5 guys. There's a few guys that I won't talk about on this episode, but I will talk about them when the NBL Blitz wraps up. But the 5 players that I came into this, or I wanted to watch and monitor coming into this NBL Blitz, I'm going to talk about them today. And the first one I want to talk about is Bobi Klintman. He is a guy that just kind of had the draft world buzzing around draft time. We thought he had a promise. There was speculation that it was Oklahoma City Thunder. Some people thought it was the Pacers. And all along, everybody was wrong. He decided to go to the NBL in Australia, join the Next Stars program. I thought that he had enough buzz based off of flashes that I thought he could have possibly been a first-round pick. I think he would have definitely got some type of guaranteed money, but he opted to go to Australia, and I think the main reason is to play, get a little bit more freedom, and of course increase his draft stock, which I think is a strong possibility. This 2024 draft class is wide open. I mean, it is like wide open, like the highways in Dallas or Houston and Atlanta, these cities that have these huge 5-lane highways in the middle of the night. That's how wide open this draft class is. I actually had an agent want me to send 50 guys that I thought were draftable that he could focus on. And I told him I can't narrow it down to 50. And I think the list I sent him is like at 113 prospects right now that I think could possibly be drafted. And that list is fluid. It's going to continue to grow. So anyway, with Klintman, I think that going to Australia was a wise choice for him. And so far, the returns have been okay. Now, if you look at the numbers on paper, and this is 2 games, and the time difference in Australia is crazy. It's late at night here, so they're probably playing right now while I'm recording. But in 2 games, just if you look at the raw numbers, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 7 of 15 shooting against Southeast Melbourne. And then he had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 of 8 shooting in another game. The one thing that I will say that he has done well is get to the foul line. He was 12 of 13 from the free throw line in those 2 games. But again, if you look at the raw numbers, you'd say he's productive. 18 points, 14 points. But when I watched the film, I wasn't as impressed. Now, what I am impressed with is something that it's well known that he has great physical tools. They have him listed at 6'9". Well, they did like 208 centimeters, so I had to translate it. But he's about 6'9", 6'10", about 225 pounds. Great body. He has the NBA frame, NBA size, the skill and athleticism that teams covet. And, just the physical tools are impressive. He's fluid. He's athletic. You have to love what you see. Now, when I watched his film, like I said, he drew fouls with his activity. That was impressive to me. I think that he is at his best in action play. So I think he's going to be like a real problem in the NBL and even in the NBA, scoring out of like dribble handoffs and different action plays where he can get downhill, and also as a cutter. He has a high IQ as a cutter, just very instinctive and intuitive cutter. And if you get him with a creative ball handler or passer, he's going to be able to find him and get him some easy looks. But it was like I still wanted to see more. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that his play was a little sloppy, a little out of control. Sometimes I felt like he was a little too adventurous with the ball in his hands. I thought he struggled with physicality. Now, the NBL is a physical league, and even though he does have the frame at 225, which is something that some of the players that I'll mention later on don't have, I just thought he really struggled finishing through contact, looked a little out of sync. As far as the jump shot, he missed all of his three-pointers. There was one, it didn't count as a 3 because his toe was on the line, but he was like 0 for 5 from 3. I want to say he was like 1 for 6 on jump shots in the 2 games in the NBL Blitz, which is kind of surprising, even though the sample size is really small. He shot the ball well on a limited sample size at Wake Forest last year, so I definitely think that he's a much better shooter than what he's shown in these last 2 games. But overall, I just felt like he was just a little sloppy and out of sync, which is common. It's very early, the preseason in a sense. Guys are shaking the rust off. He had 5 assists and 6 turnovers. He was 10 for 23 from the floor, which is not bad. It's pretty decent. So again, you look at the raw numbers, 14 points, 18 points. The numbers look good, but I was just most impressed with his ability to draw fouls with his activity. Now, I think if he puts it all together with his talent and combination of athleticism and skill set and passing, which I didn't really see a lot of the passing, but the instincts and court vision is definitely there. The decision making is totally different. But I think if he puts it all together, he still has a chance to be a lottery pick. It just takes one team to fall in love with his potential, and I think that he has the tools to be a really good NBA player. But overall, if I had to give a grade on Bobi Klintman in his 2 games that I've watched at the NBL Blitz, I'd give him like a C+, which is not bad. But again, it's early, plenty of time for him to put himself in position to be a lottery pick, or at least the first round pick that he was possibly hoping to be when he decided to play in Australia. All right, when we return, I want to talk about A.J. Johnson. A.J. Johnson was one of the top recruits in the nation, signed with Texas, and then he decided to take the trip to the land down under to develop as opposed to going to college. And I'll share my thoughts on A.J. Johnson after we talk about our title sponsor for today, which is Bird Dogs. And if you know about Bird Dogs make you look good. They are stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg, but they give you this truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts because most regular shorts are made out of this stiff and restrictive cotton, while Bird Dogs are made of this cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki, but it stretches so you get this slimmer fit, which is in right now. Even though I've seen some people starting to bring the baggy clothes back in style, or maybe they just never updated and those are the baggy clothes they wore in the 90s. But Bird Dogs gives you a truly sculpted look, and it you don't have to sacrifice movement while you have a slim look. And Bird Dogs also use this anti-stink wicking fabric that helps you stay cool and dry all day long. Bird Dogs are functional, and you can wear them for any occasion, whether it's a date or barbecue, work. Again, you will not want to take your Bird Dogs off. So go to birddogs.com/lockedon, and if you enter the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout, you can receive a free Bird Dogs water bottle. That is birddogs.com/lockedon for a free water bottle at checkout. You do not, or you will not, want to take your Bird Dogs off. Big shout out to each and every person that's made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. And again, I'm talking about 5 prospects that I was looking forward to seeing at the NBL Blitz, and I'm just giving you my evaluation after 2 games, and some guys have played 3 games. All right, the next player that I want to talk about is A.J. Johnson. A.J. Johnson plays for the Illawarra Hawks. If you're not familiar with the Illawarra Hawks, that is the team that LaMelo Ball started for while he was in Australia a couple years back. And A.J. struggled. 2 games, 8 minutes, 0 for 1 from the floor, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, 4 fouls in 8 minutes. And then the second game against Melbourne, he had 1 for 7 from the floor in 15 minutes, 2 turnovers, 1 assist, and 1 foul. I think that is going to be a long season for A.J. Johnson. He just does not have the frame and the physicality to be effective playing against these grown men. I'm not going to say that I think he made a mistake. It is way too early for that, but it is evident and it is clearly obvious that he just doesn't have the strength to handle playing with grown men. He was already pretty thin for a high schooler, and now this big level of competition, I mean, he just really struggled in 2 games. Like I said, 4 fouls in 8 minutes. And one of the games I saw, he was guarded Matthew Dellavedova. I mean, he's an NBA player. He's a champion, but he just couldn't do anything with them. But on the positive side, I like his quickness. I like how he can get to his pull-ups. He showed some flashes as a decision maker out of pick and rolls. And I love the fact that despite that he's undersized and he's just playing over his head, he remained confident, still looked to attack and get downhill. But overall, he just really struggled. I mean, he's just too light in the pants. I thought the decision making was a little raw. He passed with open threes to take tough contested shots, which he can't really finish at the rim. I thought he played just a little bit too fast, which is expected. I mean, I'm sure the nerves were there. There's some pressure on him as you know, one of the key names in this Next Stars program. And so I thought he just played too fast. Just looked really out of sync. If you played basketball, you probably can relate to this, but it reminded me of a time when I was probably in high school, and there were the grown men that were playing on the main court, and I was able to play with them. And the stuff that I used to do playing with my peers just didn't work. And so that's how I felt with him. He was just playing too fast. Looked like he was just trying to do too much. And he just based off of the 2 games I saw, like I said, it's going to be a long season. The jump shot, it just didn't look good. The turnovers, just had quite a bit of turnovers. He had more fouls than points. He also had more fouls than assists in his first 23 minutes of action in the NBL. But again, there is plenty of time for him to develop. But overall, if I had to give A.J. Johnson a grade, I'd have to give him a D. The next player that I want to talk about who also struggled quite a bit was Trentyn Flowers. He plays for the Adelaide 36ers. Now, he's played 3 games. And his 3 games combined, he has 5 assists, 13 turnovers. He's 9 of 21 from the floor, but overall, he shot the ball well from 3, 6 of 12 from 3. So there has been some encouraging signs. What I like about Flowers is I like his physical tools. I like his size and his frame. I think he has a high upside as a scorer. I thought he showed some offensive creativity. He's a good athlete, made some pretty athletic plays. Like he had an athletic finish where he dunked on somebody coming down the lane. He is someone that can get downhill, especially if it's like in a dribble handoff or an action play. I like what he brings to the table. And again, I just like the flashes of offensive creativity he showed in 3 games. However, he's not a point guard. That point guard experiment looks like it could not have gone any worse. Parker Jackson Cartwright, who's like a 5'11 guard. He's played professionally. He's a vet. He's a vet. He's played in France. He's got some experience under his belt. He ate Flowers' lunch. Picked him up full court. Flowers couldn't get by him and picked his pocket. It was bad. It was just not a good look for Trentyn Flowers as far as just being a decision maker, as far as just being able to handle the ball under pressure. I think that in high school on the prep level, because of his size, he was able to just get to where he wanted because he was bigger or stronger, athletic. He was just more gifted than a lot of the players. But I think point guard is somewhere down the line. I think he has a better chance of playing point guard in the NBA because maybe a team that drafts him, if he goes high enough, will look to develop him and give him those minutes where he can make all these mistakes. While in the Next Stars program, they definitely want to give some of the younger players in the program the opportunity to make mistakes, but they want to win. And it's just going to be tough for them to win games with him at point guard because he just couldn't bring the ball up the court against pressure. Like I said, 13 turnovers and 5 assists in 3 games. Those are not the numbers you want from a point guard. I thought he, like I said, struggled handling ball pressure. He did a poor job of reading double teams. There were times where he would drive, and he just did not read the second line of defense. And so I just thought he struggled with his decision-making. He also looked out of sync. I didn't really see much from him as a passer as far as just like the vision. Again, they got to scrap the point guard experiment, which they actually did in the 3rd game, and he played it in a reduced role. Looked better, but it wasn't great. Still had like 7 points. Just really, really rough possessions with the ball in his hands, and just driving through traffic. Just like I said, does not see or read defense as well. Despite that, I still think that he showed some flashes that you have to, just consider him a legitimate first round prospect if he can put it all together. I know some people had him as a first rounder, but again, it's really, really early. But based off of what I saw, you have to figure out what exactly is his role going to be going forward because point guard, not it. All right, when we return, I want to talk about Alex Sarr, who I think is in strong consideration to be the top pick, and then Taran Armstrong, who is one of the most exciting players as far as his offensive creativity and passing in this draft class. But before I talk about those last 2 prospects, let's talk about DoorDash. If you're like me, you don't like going to the grocery store. So if you ever need groceries for the week, but you do not have time to go, try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You get everything you want delivered when you need it right at your front door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver food from your favorite restaurants, but now you can get groceries from DoorDash. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, You can find the best in your neighborhood, and you can boost your local economy with each and every dollar. You get exactly what you ordered, and DoorDash will be sure to make it right. So sit back, enjoy the quality groceries, just like you picked them yourself. If you want even more value, you can save on all your groceries and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a DoorDash Pass membership. So you can get 50%, yes, you heard that correct, 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20 when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. Now, this is a limited offer and terms apply. That is $50 off, up to $20 on no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and you use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Do not forget, that's the code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. All right, wrapping up this last segment, I want to talk about Taran Armstrong. Now, I was a fan of Armstrong at Cal Baptist. He is a player that I talked about a couple years ago. I love his size and passing. I love his offensive creativity as a playmaker. He is just an electric passer. I mean, he's a high-risk, high-reward passer. He slings the ball across the court. He throws no-look passes, just exudes confidence when he has the ball in his hands. He is a cross between maybe like a Josh Giddey and a young Ricky Rubio. Back, when Rubio was younger, he played with this flash and this flair. I feel like he's kind of toned it down a little bit. Jason Williams is another player. I mean, maybe not as flashy, but Taran Armstrong is a 6'6" point guard, maybe 6'5", 6'6" point guard with incredible court vision and feel for the game. And he is a player that I've been monitoring for a couple years. And I think that if, a smart NBA team would definitely give him a shot. And just based off of the games that I saw, and I mean, it goes back to my notes prior to him coming home to play in the NBL Down Under, he is a very sneaky athlete. Like, sometimes you look and say, okay, he's struggling getting by a man one-on-one in isolation. But then there are times when you watch him with a ball screen, he gets to the rim, has some sneaky dunks. He hasn't had any so far, but just watching his film when he was in the States at Cal Baptist, he had some sneaky dunks. Good finisher around the rim, has really good touch around the basket. The jump shot is the concern. Shot around 30% from three in 2 years in college. Not a great free throw shooter, but he has excellent touch around the rim as far as shooting touch finish shots. And so I think that the shooting can definitely improve. It may take some time, but with his size and his passing and the creativity, especially out of pick and rolls, I mean, he is a pick and roll maestro. He is the type of player that if I were a big man, I would definitely try to play with him. For example, and I've said this before, if he was still in college and I were, like a guy like Derek Lively or Khalil Way or one of these top recruits, I would have been trying to tell whatever college I was signing with, look, go and get this Taran Armstrong kid. He's going to not only be a NBA prospect, but he is someone that is going to be able to initiate the offense and, of course, make me look better as a big man. But Armstrong decided to play in the NBL instead of, choosing to go to like a bigger program. But he is a big man's dream, especially if you're like a cutter. And he's playing with Bobi Klintman, and there were times where he was able to find Klintman like cutting on backdoor cuts around the rim. So I love Armstrong. Now, he is a high-risk, high-reward passer. So sometimes, he's a little too ambitious with his passing, but me personally, I like that. Now, for some people, you may say, well, you know what, he projects to be maybe like a backup point guard, a second or third string point guard. So you want more so of a game manager than a high-risk, high-reward passer, which is totally fair. I get that. But I personally like the court vision. I think he's going to be able to run an offense and find a big out of pick and rolls. The question is the jump shot. Just doesn't shoot him. And in the 2 games, he only took 1 jumper. And so that is something I'm going to monitor going forward. But again, I love the size and the passing and just his ability to run a team, especially in pick and rolls. Now, the last player that I want to discuss could actually be the first player in the 2024 NBA Draft, which is actually kind of crazy to me because I had him at number 30 on my preseason big board, but I guarantee you he'll be a lot higher when I release the next edition of my big board. But it's Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is a player that I've always been a fan of the talent, but I've always just had questions about his lack of dominance. I didn't think that he dominated games like his talent suggests. And even though he didn't put up huge numbers here at the Blitz, 12 points in one game, 8 points in another, 13 points in the third game, I have been impressed with his activity, especially on the defensive end. On the defensive end, I mean, he can defend the space, he can block shots. He is going to be a real good defender in the NBA, especially once he gets stronger. Right now, he's not as strong as some of the older players that he's defending, but he's still a factor around the rim, and he can defend in space. So I think once he gets stronger, I think that he has the tools to be a defensive player of the year candidate. That's how high I am on Alexander Sarr on the defensive end. At the minimum, I think he can be an all NBA defender, just like I said, with his ability to defend the space, protect the rim. And I talked about it last week. He had a sequence against Ron Holland where he just showed what he is capable of as a defender. On the offensive end, I think he has a chance to be special there because he's so versatile. He can knock down open shots. He can score as a lob threat. He can be your pick and roll man. He has this LaMarcus Aldridge turnaround jumper that I'm just in love with. And there are some plays, and I don't think this is his comparison, but there are some plays where he looks like a young LaMarcus Aldridge, especially, like I said, with the turnaround off the left shoulder, the high release. I think that, again, once he is stronger, he's going to be a factor in the low post because he has such good touch around the rim. He's active on the glass, has really good timing, especially on offensive rebound tip-backs or putbacks. I think that he is someone that is going to be able to score on a low usage. He doesn't need a bunch of touches. He can, like I said, score on the offensive glass as a roll man, lob threat. But I love the touch around the rim, whether it's like he had this play where he shot like a baseline touch floater. That was impressive to me. The turnaround jumper was impressive. But what I like that Perth is doing is they're giving him the freedom to play with the ball in his hands in space. If he wants to bring the ball up court, they'll let him bring the ball up court. They'll let him attack at the top of the key. And with his long strides to the rim, it just doesn't take much for him to get there. He covers so much ground. And he is showing that he is comfortable attacking in space off the dribble, which once the jump shot becomes a little bit more consistent, he's going to be a threat to attack closeouts. The talent is there. Like I said, I've always been a fan of the talent, but now I'm even more of a fan of his talent on top of this new role where he's a lot more assertive and aggressive. But I haven't even talked about the passing. He is one of the better passing bigs in this class. I mean, he's just skilled. He just skilled all the way around. I saw there was one play where he had the ball at the elbow and he did a dribble move and then he was able to whip a live dribble pass to a cutter. He can find guys in the mid post. I think he's going to be a really good short roll passer. But again, I love the fact that Perth has given him, I don't know if it's newfound confidence or everywhere else he's been has kind of restricted him. He touched on it a little bit in the episode where I did an interview with him. If you missed that, check it out. It's a couple episodes back. I did a one-on-one interview with Alexander Sarr while he was in the States at the G League Fall Invitational. And he did mention that he hasn't been featured like this before. So I think with him being featured a little bit more and the fact that his confidence has grown, I think that he's going to be a special player. I know I've used that word a couple of times, but I mean, it may sound crazy, but I think he has the chance to be the top pick in the 2024 NBA draft. You just don't find 7-footers with this type of skill, 7'5" wingspan that can play on both sides of the ball and impact games as a shot blocker, a switchy defender, and the offensive skill set is, I mean, it's something that you just don't see often. So I think Alexander Sarr has a really good chance to be the number one pick. Well, that wraps up this episode. I touched on 5 prospects that I've been monitoring and watching at the NBL Blitz. Now, there's a couple more prospects that I didn't mention in this episode that I guarantee you will hear me talk about them in the near future. There's still another day or two left in the NBL Blitz, so I couldn't do a wrap-up. And I'll name all of the top prospects whose stock is, in my opinion, going up and whose stock may be going down just based off of their performance. And again, small sample size, nothing to panic about. But once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, and I am